Welcome to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, 5 things we've learnt from the second week of La Vuelta a España. We also have a new individual pursuit world record, the Tour of Britain, the Boels Ladies Tour, the opening European Cyclocross race in Eeklo, an incredibly close finish at the Brussels Cycling Classic, and all the latest rider transfer news. First up though, let's start with La Vuelta, which looks like this going into week 3. Primoz Roglic at the top of the standings by a clear margin, 2 minutes and 25 seconds ahead of Alejandro Valverde, and almost 4 minutes ahead of compatriot Tadej Pogačar, who sits in third and as best young rider. So, the first thing that we've learnt in the second week is that Primoz Roglic looks infallible. There hasn't been a single moment of weakness, a single tactical mistake, and his team have been more than up to the task of defending his race lead. He went into that race lead and the leader's red jersey on Tuesday's time trial, where he pretty much demolished all of his key rivals, putting at least 1 minute into anybody that could be considered an overall threat. We did, of course, expect him to take time on his rivals there, but perhaps not quite that much. That stage win also means that Roglic has won a stage of every Grand Tour that he's started, which is 5 so far. And according to Cillian Kelly, he's the first person to achieve that since Jeroen Blijlevens back in 1997. And then on the climbs and the mountains, he's always been with the best on each stage, barring one crash, whilst the others, Valverde, Quintana, Lopez and Pogačar, have all at some point had a slightly off day where they've lost time. Today is no doubt going to be another big test for everybody, but the way things stand, it is very hard to see Primoz Roglic losing this race. The second thing we've learned from week 2 is that Jumbo-Visma could have a rather nice problem on their hands in 2020. With Roglic and Kruijswijk, they have 2 riders who could potentially win a Grand Tour. With Tom Dumoulin, they have a rider who has already won a Grand Tour. And with Sepp Kuss, they have somebody with enormous potential. This marks the 3rd Grand Tour in the career of the 24-year-old American, and he's been riding incredibly well. Always there for Roglic deep into the mountain stages, fending off attacks from some of the best climbers in the world. And yesterday, he proved that he's a winner himself. It's always really nice to see a worker get their chance, and Kuss certainly grabbed it with both hands. That is his first win as a pro in Europe, and in fact his first away from home soil. The first of many though, you would imagine. Add into the mix the likes of George Bennett and Laurens de Plus, and that team really does have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the high mountains. And we haven't even mentioned their other star riders, the likes of Dylan Groenewegen and Wout van Aert. And I tell you what, it's great to see a team that doesn't have the biggest budget in the World Tour, developing so much talent and winning so much. They've been the team of the year for me, in fact, in 2019, with 44 wins so far through 11 different riders, and the biggest one potentially just 6 days away. Now, whilst they are on the rise, Nairo Quintana appears to be on the demise. Am I unfair in saying that? Well, do you know what? I would absolutely love to see Quintana back to his very best, and I felt like we had a glimpse of that when he won that stage of the Tour de France this year in an incredibly dominant fashion, and even on day 2 of the Vuelta, in fact, where he soloed to the win on what was a brilliant stage. After that, I think we all thought, wow, he's back, and he's the man to beat at this year's race, but since then, he just hasn't really been himself, has he? Internal team struggles probably aren't helping matters, but you do wonder whether his move to Arkea Samsic is going to help. It's been 2.5 years, in fact, since he last finished better than 8th overall in a Grand Tour. Up to that point, it had been 4 years since he'd finished outside the top 4. So, I'm going to put this out to you lot. Do you think that Nairo Quintana can get back to his best, or are his days of challenging for Grand Tours behind him? You can let us know by taking the poll which is on your screen right now, and feel free to get stuck into the comments section too. Speaking of polls, actually, last week we asked you if gravel has a place in road racing, and 70% of you said yes, it does. The people have spoken. We also learnt in week 2 that Sam Bennett can lay claim to being one of the best sprinters in the world right now. His 2 stage wins here brought his tally for the season up to 13, by far his most successful season yet. 11 of those 13 have been in World Tour races, and one of the others was obviously his National Championships win. Now, when you consider just how distraught he was last winter when his team, Bora Hansgrohe, snubbed him for a position at the Giro d'Italia in favour of Pascal Ackermann, it's really quite amazing what he's been able to do with the opportunities that he has been presented with. We don't yet know who he's going to be riding for in 2020, but whoever it is, I really hope they give him a chance at the Tour de France. And finally, we learnt that growing marijuana on a rooftop when a bike race is coming to town is not a great idea. Well, it's not a great idea anyway, but you know what I mean. These aerial shots from stage 8 captured the mini plantation, although by the time police got there, the suspects had scuppered, probably having seen their roof on TV in full HD. Now, unfortunately, there was no prize for the first rider across the line at the highest point of this year's race. I'll get my coat. Before we move on, quick note to tell you what's coming up this week on GCN Racing. We will, of course, continue with our daily highlights of La Vuelta worldwide. We've also got daily highlights of the Tour of Britain to most territories. And we have some live racing this weekend for those of you in North, Central and South America. The Coppa Agostini and the Coppa Binocchi, which basically kick off the Italian autumnal one-day classic series. They're on Saturday and Sunday, respectively. Speaking of the Tour of Britain, that race kicked off on Saturday, but without, unfortunately, Richard Carapaz of Team Movistar. He was unable to make it to Britain at all due to visa issues, which I find highly embarrassing actually. It's not the first time this happened in our country, and it doesn't appear that these riders have the same trouble racing in other countries. A big loss for the Tour of Britain, in fact, that one. Anyway, out of those who did manage to make it to Scotland for the opening stage of the race, it was Dylan Groenewegen who proved fastest. He outsprinted Davide Cimolai to take his 12th win of the year. Meanwhile, Matteo Trentin of Mitchelton Scott, who'd been third on that first stage, went into the leader's jersey the following day after winning stage 2. He and the rest of the bunch had caught Alex Dowsett of Katusha Alpecin agonisingly close to the finish line. And Trentin's win came despite the lengthy transfers that he is evidently not a fan of. This is what he tweeted that very morning. However, as the organisation pointed out in reply, it can be hard and tough to find accommodation close to the start and finish areas that's up to standard. That said, I do know from personal experience that you spend a lot of time in the team bus at the Tour of Britain. The race will conclude this coming Saturday in Manchester. Moving on, we were very happy last week to be able to bring you highlights and indeed live coverage of the last 2 days of the Boels Ladies Tour up in the Netherlands. If you missed out on any of that coverage, you can find it all right here on the channel still. Now, it's a race that doesn't have that much in the way of elevation gain, but it was made tough by the weather. And it was made even tougher for the prologue winner Annemiek van Vleuten after this remarkably accurate throw of a bead on stage 5. That was, in fact, the decisive stage for the general classification. Franziska Koch of Team Sunweb took the stage win. She only turned 19 a couple of months ago. But it was Christine Majerus, the Luxembourg champion of Boels Dormans, who'd moved herself into the leader's jersey, which she would keep through to the end of the race. Lorena Wiebes had demonstrated that she's the sprinter to beat at the moment by taking stages 1 and 2, beating Kirsten Wild on both occasions. However, she was beaten on the final stage by Chiara Consonni of the Valcar Silence cycling team in a reduced bunch sprint. Consonni is just 20 years old. That marked her first professional victory, and this is how much it meant to her.
It's my first victory, and so I say thanks to all my family, friends, team, photographer, and all everybody, because cycling is a family, and I'm very happy to share with you this emotion. Thank you.
I absolutely love interviews like that. Well done, Chiara. You are this week's GCN Rider of the Week. We also, at the weekend, had a couple of one-day classics, starting on Saturday with the Brussels Cycling Classic, which had one of the best photo finishes of all time. Now, it's not often that you see 6 riders throwing their bike for the finish line in a sprint, but that is exactly what happened at the end of the race. So, in reverse order, Arnaud Demar, Jasper Stuyven, Davide Ballerini, Jasper Philipsen, Pascal Ackermann, and then the winner, Caleb Ewan. And what a season it's been, in the end, for the Australian. It took him a while to get going at the start of this year, but in the end, he's come out of it with 10 wins, 2 at the Giro, 3 at the Tour, and finally with a one-day classic win, and a classic that started all the way back in 1893. And that's basically his season finished. He's going to take a break now before rebuilding towards 2020. The following day at the Grand Prix Formier, we also had a bunch sprint. Nasser Bouhanni of Team Cofidis had been up there until this quite unbelievable crash. Now, he appears to get tangled with another rider, at which point he gets flung to the side of the road like a pinball, whilst his bike ends up going in the opposite direction, taking out another couple of riders in the process. I've never seen anything quite like that before, I don't think. Emerging unscathed at the front, though, was Pascal Ackermann of Bora Hansgrohe, taking his 10th win of the season too. Now, believe it or not, the cyclocross season has already started as well. Lasty and I were yesterday commentating on the first round of the ETS Cross in Eeklo, Belgium, and we had a couple of brilliant races. In the women's, Maud Captains, who'd been distanced early on, clawed her way back and managed to get the better of two 20-year-olds, World Under-23 champion Inge van der Heijden and Brit Anna Kay. I'm expecting to see plenty more of all of those three later on this year. It was also great to see Jolien Verschuren make her return to competition in that very race. She had a malignant brain tumour removed in April of 2018, and while she didn't finish the event, being on the start line in itself was a win. In the men's race, we had a very close battle on what was a very dry and fast course. That, in part, was probably helped by the absence of Van der Poel and Van Aert. Coming into the last lap, there were still a good 7 riders in contention for the win, but it was Laurens Sveik who powered his way through the sand section, gapping the others and sprinting out of every other corner towards the finish line. I have to say, it was very impressive indeed to watch live. And if you want to catch up on either event, or even both, they are still available as live to most territories around the world. You may want to watch it just to check that Lasty is indeed still alive and well. Now, as mentioned at the top of the show, we had a new world record set in the individual pursuit at the weekend. Not just once, in fact, but twice by Ashton Lambie, who was the man who already held that record. He clocked a 4:06.407 in the semi-finals, but went even better in the final itself with a 4:05.423. The Pan American Track Cycling Championships were taking place in Bolivia at 2,500 metres above sea level, and it has led to more discussions as to whether there should be separate world record for sea level versus altitude. Whatever, that was just an unbelievable performance from Lambie. I could be at 10,000 metres with an oxygen mask and not even get close. Right, we are going to finish with some more transfer news, and to start with, not a rider, but a manager. It's been announced that Rolf Aldag will leave Team Dimension Data at the end of this season. Not really a huge surprise when you consider the fallout over Mark Cavendish's non-selection for the Tour de France. Not yet clear exactly where he'll be next season, but hopefully we'll find out soon. Some of the worst kept secrets have also been confirmed over the last 7 days. Richard Carapaz will indeed move from Movistar over to Team Ineos, further adding to their Grand Tour firepower. And they've also signed the young Colombian Brandon Rivera. I have to confess, I don't know anything about him. In fact, I can't even find him on Pro Cycling Stats. If you do, please help me out in the comments section down below. Also, somewhat unsurprisingly at this point, Nairo Quintana has confirmed that he's heading to Arkea Samsic along with Diego Rosa, his brother Dyer and winner Anacona. Fabio Follini will move from Trek Segafredo to Astana next year, but Trek have acquired the services of Charlie Quarterman, the British Under-23 time trial champion. And finally, 3 Belgian riders have announced their retirement: Maxime Montfort, Kenny de Haas and Bart de Klerk. Congratulations to all of you on your careers. Okay, that is all for this week. I'll be back next week with the conclusions of La Vuelta and the Tour of Britain, plus the Grand Prix of Quebec and Montreal and the Women's Madrid Challenge. In the meantime, if you're interested in your tech, you might want to check out the videos on GCN Tech from Eurobike. In this next one, John went in search of his favourite bikes from the show. You can find it just here.